So we're going to be talking today about classification of living things. So why do we classify living things? Reminder, we've already gone over that. The purpose of classification is to see the relationships among organisms. So the study of classification, or the science of describing, classifying, and naming these living things, is called taxonomy. So that's what we're going to be learning about. That's the big science term for it, is taxonomy. So right now we are studying taxonomy, which is the classification of living things. So our modern system of classification is based on the idea from Carlos Linnaeus, who talked about naming living things, and we took his idea and we created this whole system of classification. And this system of classification has 8 levels. The 8 levels are domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And I put them in this triangle shape. And the reason for that is because, remember, why we're classifying these is to see how closely related, see how the relationships among organisms, we're trying to see how closely related they are. And so as you work your way down this triangle, as you go from domain to species, when you go down, when you work your way down, there are fewer and fewer animals, or living things in general. And the reason that there are fewer and fewer is because they become more and more closely related. So things within the same order are more closely related than things within the same phylum. And as they get more and more closely related, obviously there are less and less of them. So it would be totally impossible for us to expect you to know all of the different domains and kingdoms and phylums and classes, all of that. But at the biggest level, we do want you to know what those are. So there are 3 domains, and the reason we want you to know about them is, again, we talked about how the farther you go down, the more and more closely related they are. So at the domain level, these are things that are very, very drastically different. The domains represent the largest major differences among organisms. So this was the basis for how we were separating these out. These were the big, giant, wow, we need to separate these immediately straight off the bat things. So there are 3 domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. So I'm going to talk about bacteria and archaea first. Bacteria and archaea are both prokaryotes. So these are, if you think back to when we first talked about the cell, there were 2 kinds, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. These are all prokaryotic cells, and they reproduce by cell division. The similarities end there. Bacteria, you heard of bacteria before, they're super common. They live most places. Soil, water, you've got some on you, there's some on the desk, there's some on my iPad recording this. And then there are archaea. And archaea are different from bacteria because archaea live in harsh places. So this word harsh, may not 100% know what that means. Harsh is the science term for super difficult. And when I say difficult, for example, some harsh places that they would live are hot springs or thermal vents. Now, a hot spring is not just warm, like it's not like a jacuzzi, it is hundreds of degrees. Thermal vents, again, the same hundreds of degrees. You can find archaea in really acidic or really basic environments. Basically, if it's something we do to kill bacteria, and then there's something still living there, that's the archaea. And they can do this because they have specialized cell walls that protect them. And so that's the difference between the bacteria and the archaea, is where they're able to live, and they're able to live there because of that difference in that cell wall. And so, again, I started off by saying that they were both prokaryotes, bacteria and archaea. So we've got prokaryotes. That other kind of cell is the eukaryotic cell. And so then we have domain eukarya. And so anything that is a eukaryote is in the domain eukarya. And those are the biggest differences, the largest major differences among organisms. Everything that's a eukarya, everything that is a eukaryotic cell is in kingdom eukarya. The prokaryotes are split between bacteria and archaea, and that is an overview of domains and classification of living things.